I've decided to give up on my girlfriend. I'm not going to marry her. Whoever she ends up with, I don't care. From now on, I'm just going to treat her like she's already someone else's wife. And enjoy every last minute of it. Forget being gentle. It's time to take what's mine. It's all because of her so-called good friend from work, Caleb. Just because he helped her out when she first started her job. He became her eternal savior, and she could never refuse any of his requests for help. I never thought that the moment I finally let go, she'd be the one to panic, suddenly willing to do anything I asked. In the end, pressured by her parents, and with me making it crystal clear I would never marry her, she tearfully married Caleb. Well, look how the tables have turned. Now it's my turn to ask your wife for a little help, isn't it? You manipulative prick. I can play that game too, and I'm going to enjoy it. 1. A ceasefire? No, a strategic retreat, babe. Have to work late tonight, might be a while. Don't wait up for dinner, XO. That was the last text Chloe sent me. I stared at the iMessage bubble on my screen, feeling nothing. Not a flicker of anger. If anything, I almost wanted to laugh. Hadn't she gotten tired of using the same excuse over and over? On a whim, I opened Instagram. After a couple of refreshes, a new story popped up at the front of the queue. It was Caleb. He'd posted a photo. In it, Chloe was wearing an apron, turned to the side, busy in his open-concept kitchen. The warm, moody lighting made the whole scene look incredibly cozy. The caption was the real masterpiece. Couldn't have survived without the amazing Chloe. Guess I'll just have to repay this life debt with my body. Winking face, red heart, posted 2 hours ago. 0 likes, 0 comments. Completely out of character for him. Son of a bitch. He'd done it again. Set his story to be visible only to me. A hot rage shot up my spine, straight to the top of my skull. My fists clenched instantly. Same damn playbook. A calculated accident. A provocation delivered with pinpoint accuracy. I could almost picture Caleb's smug, punchable face as he posted it, just waiting for me to lose my shit. Waiting for me to start a fight with Chloe so he could swoop in and play the innocent victim. What? I was just joking around, thanking her for her help. Why is he so mad again? See, Chloe? He doesn't trust you at all. Trust? You two ground that trust into dust a long time ago. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Strangely, the firestorm of fury didn't last. It was as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. With a sizzle, all that was left was a bone-deep, chilling clarity. Argue? What was the point? What would it accomplish other than making me look like a hysterical psycho? Her apology? I heard it so many times my ears were calloused. A single thought crystallized in my mind with unprecedented clarity. This woman was not wife material. Not for me, anyway. A line I'd read somewhere flashed through my head. If you're not going to marry her, who cares who she hangs out with? That's it. I slapped my thigh, a wave of enlightenment washing over me. She was going to be someone else's wife eventually. So why was I wasting my energy getting angry? But all the time, the emotion, the stress I'd invested in this relationship. I couldn't just write it all off as a loss, could I? I had to collect some interest. With that thought, my entire perspective shifted. My mindset instantly flipped from enraged, long-suffering boyfriend to debt collector ready to seize assets on a bad loan. I calmly took a screenshot, saving the evidence. I even took a moment to appreciate Chloe's silhouette in the photo. She did have a nice waist. It was almost 10 when Chloe finally dragged her overtime-exhausted body home. You're back. Tough night at the office, I said from the couch, not looking up from my phone. Yeah, I'm so tired, she mumbled, her voice laced with a familiar guilt as she kicked off her shoes. Really? I said, putting my phone down. I pulled up the screenshot and turned the screen toward her. Working late at Caleb's place? Was the big project unclogging his drains or fixing his laptop? Sounds like it was worthy of a company-wide announcement. The color drained from Chloe's face. Her eyes widened as she leaned in to look at the screen, her lips trembling slightly. No, it's not what you think. Let me explain. His pipe really did burst. It was flooding his apartment, about to leak into the unit below. He couldn't handle it by himself. He called me in a total panic. I just thought I'd go help for a bit. I was going to be right back. I was afraid you'd get the wrong idea. That's why I didn't tell you the truth. She stammered, her hands fluttering nervously. Her eyes were filled with that all-too-familiar look of panic and guilt. The old me, upon seeing her like this, would have felt his anger subside by half. Then we would have launched into the same tired argument. Why do you always lie to me first? Why is it always him? Do you even respect me as your boyfriend? And every time she'd say, I know I was wrong, I'll change, I promise. He just helped me out that one time, I feel bad saying no. And then the next time Caleb played the victim, she'd go running to repay her debt all over again. But tonight, I just watched her quietly. My face was blank, and my eyes probably held a hint of pity. Yes, that was it. Pity. Pity for her, for trotting out the same tired script, and pity for the old me, who used to be foolish enough to believe it. I listened in silence as she stumbled through her explanation. At one point, she tried to grab my phone, but I gently moved it out of her reach. When she finished, the silence in the room was deafening. She watched me nervously, bracing for the hurricane she expected. But it never came. I just nodded, a simple acknowledgement. I get it, and then said nothing more. I stood up and walked straight to the bedroom. The silence terrified her more than any shouting match ever could. Wait. She panicked, just as I knew she would. She hurried after me, grabbing my arm from behind. Don't be mad. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Next time he needs anything, I'll tell you first. I'll talk to you about it. Okay? Please, don't ignore me. Her voice was thick with tears. She was genuinely scared. I turned and looked at her, at the panicked red rims of her eyes. The frozen lake in my chest showed no signs of thawing. You tired? I asked. She froze for a second, then nodded dumbly. My head's killing me. Rub my temples for me, I said calmly. I paused, then added, or you could just buy me that new gaming controller I've had sitting in my Amazon cart. Your choice. Chloe was clearly not expecting this. She just stood there stunned. The fight she had prepared for never materialized. Instead, there was this specific demand. An overwhelming wave of guilt and fear of losing me washed over her, leaving no room to analyze the meaning behind my request. I'll do it. The massage, she practically shouted, immediately pushing me down to sit on the edge of the bed. Her warm fingers, trembling slightly, found my temples and began to knead with a desperate energy. I closed my eyes, savoring her rare, placating service. Later tonight, I began slowly. Do you think you could? Oh, but I'm not really in the mood. She hesitated. Forget it then. I guess I still can't compete with, I'll do it. She cut me off before I could finish. Just please, don't be mad. Yes. This interest payment was off to a very good start. 2. The manipulator's meltdown after that night's strategic retreat. I felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The old frustration and simmering anger were replaced by a strange sense of liberation. Once my mindset changed, everything looked better. I started calling up friends I hadn't seen in ages to shoot hoops after work. The feeling of being drenched in sweat was infinitely better than stewing in resentment at home. I'd sprawl on the couch and finally get lost in the games that used to be constantly interrupted by some emergency that required Chloe's help. My productivity at work even shot up now that my emotional energy wasn't being drained. My boss even commented, "You've been on fire lately." Even Chloe noticed the change. She kept giving me these furtive looks, her eyes filled with confusion and a growing unease. She was probably braced for the silent treatment or for me to rehash the incident, but I did neither. I ate well, slept soundly, and even found myself humming off-key tunes around the apartment. You seem like you're in a really good mood lately. She finally ventured one morning at breakfast. I said, taking a bite of my fried egg. Figured some things out. Life's easier when you let stuff go. I guess I just wasn't chill enough before. She stared at me, trying to detect a hint of sarcasm in my expression, but found none. My smile was nothing but genuine, sunshiny brightness. This good mood of mine reached its zenith when Caleb decided to pull another one of his stunts. That evening, we had just finished dinner when Chloe's phone rang. It had a specific ringtone, a custom alert for a contact named Caleb, work. Pathetic. Adding work in parentheses as if that made it any less suspicious. She picked up the phone, her expression shifting. She instinctively glanced at me, her eyes filled with that familiar cocktail of tension and anxiety. I didn't need to be a psychic to know what kind of drama was unfolding on the other end of the line. It was either he'd suddenly collapsed and needed to be rushed to the ER, or he'd found a cockroach in his apartment and needed someone to hold his hand. Sure enough, she answered, and after a few mumbles of a and oh no, her brow furrowed. What? That's serious? Are you okay by yourself? But she covered the mouthpiece, looked at me with a pained expression, and mouthed silently. He's sick. Sounds really bad. He's all alone. The old me would have had a face as black as charcoal by now, the temperature in the room dropping to Arctic levels. But today I just raised an eyebrow. Then, with an air of extreme magnanimity, I waved a hand and said, in a voice just loud enough for the person on the other end to probably hear, "Go on, go. If he's really sick, you shouldn't wait. The man needs help. Go check on him. Take him to the hospital if you have to." I even added, helpfully, "You want me to come with you? An extra pair of hands is always good." Chloe was completely floored. She just stood there, phone in hand, looking utterly dumbfounded. I could only imagine Caleb was just as stunned on the other end. She probably thought I was being sarcastic, and she frantically scanned my face for any sign of it, but all she found was genuine and morbidly curious concern. No, no, that's okay, she stammered into the phone. You just hang on, I'll be right over. After hanging up, she stood there at a total loss. I'll just go check on him and come right back. It should be quick, she promised, though her voice lacked conviction. No problem. No rush. Take good care of the patient, I said with a broad smile. Call me anytime if you need help. She left, her head filled with a million questions and an even greater sense of dread. The moment the door clicked shut, I grabbed my phone. Boys, get online. Daddy's got all night. Time to carry you to victory. Hey, if it weren't for Caleb's perfectly timed phone call, I wouldn't have had an excuse to blow off my mom's nightly FaceTime check-in. Thanks for that, buddy. I was deep in the zone, racking up kills, when a WhatsApp notification popped up. Caleb again. An Instagram story this time. It was a photo taken from the perspective of someone lying in bed. In a blurry background, you could make out the figure of a woman bustling about. I recognized the apron. The caption read, "You find out who your real friends are when you're sick. So grateful to have you here." Folded hands. I almost burst out laughing. Dude, is that all you've got? Can you come up with a new trick besides posting passive-aggressive Instagram stories to get under my skin? I didn't even bother tapping to see the full picture. I just swiped the notification away and went back to securing my pentakill. It was nearly midnight when Chloe returned, a genuine exhaustion etched on her face. She opened the door quietly, and when she saw the living room light was still on and I was still gaming, she visibly relaxed. That relief was immediately followed by a fresh wave of guilt. How is he? I asked, my eyes still glued to the screen. It was just acute gastroenteritis. He had a fever, too. He's taken some medicine and is asleep now, she answered cautiously, standing behind me. Oh, good. Glad he's okay. I finished the match, put down the controller, and finally turned to face her. You must be tired. Get some rest. No interrogation. No cold shoulder. I even sounded concerned. This was completely outside the realm of her expectations. The defenses and explanations she had been rehearsing the entire way home were suddenly useless. The feeling of throwing a punch and hitting nothing but air left her even more disoriented. Guilt washed over her like a tidal wave. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked as she came forward and hugged me from behind. I broke my promise again. Please don't be mad. I don't know what to do anymore. I patted her hand. I told you it's fine. It's good to help people. She hugged me tighter, as if I'd vanish if she let go. Is there anything you want me to do? I'll do anything, as long as you're not mad at me, she said, tilting her head back to look at me, her eyes wet and shimmering with a desperate, all-or-nothing desire to make amends. Oh, the interest is delivering itself to my doorstep? I stroked my chin, pretending to think. I remembered how she used to get all flustered and call me a pervert whenever I suggested she buy some sexier lingerie. I saw this thing online the other day. People calling their partner master or something. Sounds interesting, I said, trying to make my tone sound like pure, innocent curiosity. Let's hear it. Chloe's face flushed a brilliant crimson, the color spreading all the way to the tips of her ears. Her eyes darted away as her lips trembled, clearly waging a fierce internal battle. But in the end, guilt and fear won out over shame. In a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, she squeezed two words out of her throat. Mastir. It was as faint as a mosquito's buzz, but she said it. A wicked sense of satisfaction bloomed inside me. Awesome. Good girl, I said, smiling as I ruffled her hair. Go run a bath for me. I'm tired, could use a good soak. As if granted a pardon, she scurried into the bathroom, a strange mix of relief and humiliation on her face. I watched her go, a cold sneer forming on my lips. Caleb, you magnificent idiot. You orchestrate this whole dramatic illness, and what you get? A worn-out nurse running errands for you all night. Meanwhile, I get to sit here, play video games, and be called master. Who really won this round? Just then, my phone lit up again. It was Caleb. A text this time. What did you say to her? She seemed really weird when she left, was in a huge rush. I stared at the message, picturing him lying in bed, fuming and utterly confused. I slowly typed my reply. Nothing much. Just told her to take good care of you. Slightly smiling face, send. Imagining his face, I hummed a cheerful tune and headed for the bathroom. The water was just the right temperature. Collecting interest, it turned out, felt pretty damn good. 3. The master class A, few days later, Caleb, presumably recovered from his illness, was back to his usual attention-seeking self. He invited me and Chloe out to dinner that weekend, ostensibly to thank her for taking care of him and just catch up. The wolf inviting the chickens over for a chat. I knew exactly what this was. His passive-aggressive posts hadn't worked, so now he was planning to go for a direct, in-person assault. Chloe was hesitant, looking at me, terrified I'd be upset. I nodded enthusiastically. Sure, why not? It's a nice gesture. Besides, I had nothing better to do. Might as well go watch the show. That weekend, at a trendy bistro downtown, Caleb sat across from us, looking sharp, and when the waiter came, he ordered for Chloe with practiced ease. Chloe doesn't like cilantro, prefers things on the less salty side, and no ice in her drink. He finished with a little smile in her direction, a look that screamed, "See? I know her so much better than you do." Chloe shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me from under her lashes. I took a sip of my water, a pleasant smile on my face. "You know, you're a great friend to her," I said to Caleb, then turned to Chloe. "He's even more attentive than I am. No wonder you go to him for everything." I put a special emphasis on the word everything. The color drained from Chloe's face, and under the table, her hands began twisting nervously in her lap. Caleb jumped in, his own manipulative charm oozing. "Oh, it's nothing. We're colleagues. We look out for each other. Besides, you're a busy guy. It's natural you can't always be there for Chloe. I'm just happy to lend a hand." "You're right." I nodded in agreement. My tone is sincere as a Boy Scout's. "If it weren't for a dedicated, helpful guy friend like you, I don't know what our Chloe would do. Unclogging drains, fixing computers, being an emotional support hotline. It's full-service, on-demand help. Way more reliable than a boyfriend." Chloe looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. The smile on Caleb's face was starting to look strained. He clearly hadn't expected this reaction. My praise felt more like an indictment. The rest of the dinner proceeded in that vein, me offering periodic, heartfelt compliments to Caleb, Chloe sitting on pins and needles, and Caleb forcing a smile. On the way home, Chloe was unusually quiet. The moment we got inside, she finally broke, her voice choked with tears. "Those things you said. You were mocking me, weren't you? You're still angry, aren't you?" I looked at her red-rimmed eyes, feeling nothing but a cold void. I almost wanted to give her an award for best performance in a guilt-ridden role. "Not at all," I said, my face a mask of innocence. I was genuinely thanking him. If it weren't for him, how would I have ever known what a charitable person my girlfriend is? I reached out and gently wiped a tear from the corner of her eye with my thumb. The gesture was tender, but my voice was ice. It also helped me see that for some problems, all it takes is a little whining and playing the victim, and there will always be someone eager to come running. My words were a needle, precisely piercing the fragile calm she was trying to maintain. The tears started falling faster, and she was overcome by a massive wave of guilt and helplessness. "I'm sorry. I really didn't know it would turn out like this. I'll never again." "Shoo," I interrupted, pressing a finger to her lips. "Talk is cheap." She looked up at me, her tear-filled eyes uncomprehending. "You want to make it up to me, right?" I leaned in closer, my voice low and seductive. "Just saying master once isn't nearly enough." Her body trembled slightly, as if she sensed what was coming. I pulled out my phone, opened the Amazon app, and navigated to a bookmarked item I'd seen long ago, something I knew she would have flatly refused before. It was an incredibly sexy, ridiculously skimpy black lace teddy. I turned the screen to face her. "Wear this for me." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Chloe's face exploded in a blush that crept down her neck. Her eyes darted away, and she mumbled, That's too much." "Too much what?" I feigned confusion. "Didn't you say you'd do anything for me?" Or, I paused, my voice hardening. "Is your compensation just empty words? Just like your promises not to bail on me again?" Guilt. The word was like a magic spell, instantly shattering her hesitation and shame. She bit her lower lip, and as if making a monumental decision, she squeezed her eyes shut, practically snatched the phone from my hand, and said in a trembling voice, I'll buy it." Watching her, this mix of grim determination and utter submission, a twisted sense of pleasure surged through me. Yes, exactly like this. Use her guilt to forge a leash. Make her give ground, piece by piece, until she was fulfilling every unreasonable demand she had once scoffed at. This interest, it was getting easier and easier to collect. A few days later, she answered another of Caleb's emergency calls. Apparently he needed help picking out a birthday gift for his mom. The kind of trivial crap that required stealing someone's evening. When she came back, she was unbelievably docile. She sidled up next to me, her eyes glistening with a placating look. Is there anything else you want me to do?" I looked at her, seeing not my girlfriend, but a fascinating new toy delivered to my doorstep for my personal amusement. I started getting creative, pulling ideas from things I'd seen online, making even more outrageous requests. Not in the living room, but in more private, more humiliating places. Not just wearing something, but adding an element of roleplay. Every time, she would blush. She would hesitate. She would be so embarrassed her toes would curl. But every time, all it took was for me to show a flicker of disappointment. If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm used to your empty promises anyway. Or, to mention, you sure run fast enough when Caleb calls. And that damn guilt would seize her instantly. Then, she would close her eyes, take a deep breath, and say in a tone of near-tragic resignation, "Okay." It was as if she was using this self-flagellating obedience to prove she loved me, to fill the void of debt she had created by choosing another man over me. Until one time, after another successful experiment, she lay limp in my arms, still catching her breath. She suddenly asked in a soft voice, a voice laced with an almost imperceptible despair, Do you still love me? What are we even doing?" The air went still. My hand, which had been stroking her hair, paused for a beat before continuing. My voice was light, casual. "Does it matter if I love you? You're making me happy right now. Isn't that enough?" I felt her body go rigid against mine. I twisted the knife, my tone now tinged with mock confusion. "I thought you wanted to make things up to me. Are you telling me this is already too much for you?" She lay silent in my arms for a long time. In the end, she swallowed all her words and tears and just held on to me tighter. She never asked again. I knew then the leash was secure, and I, the debt collector, could start enjoying a much richer return on my investment. 4. The implosion of a hint lately. It seemed like everyone on my social media feeds had conspired to post engagement announcements, wedding photos, and diamond rings. Even my TikTok algorithm was pushing a steady stream of dream weddings and honeymoon destinations. The atmosphere was finally getting to Chloe. She started to seem distracted, distant. We'd be watching a movie, and during a wedding scene, she'd murmur, "That bride's dress is so beautiful." Or we'd be walking through the mall, and she'd linger for a few extra seconds in front of a jewelry store, her eyes sparkling as she stared at the rings in the window. She started dropping hints, casual but pointed. "My old college roommate is getting married next month. She invited both of us. Look at this influencer's home renovation. It's so cozy. I heard they're selling new condos over at the Oak Ridge development. The school district is supposed to be great." Each time, I'd brush it off with a non-committal, "Oh, really? That's nice. We'll see." The light in her eyes would dim a little with each flat response. But the next time, she'd summon her courage and try again from a different angle. I could feel her trying to piece together a vague blueprint for our future, hoping I'd pick up the pen and start drawing with her. But I wouldn't bite. I played the role of the most clueless boyfriend on earth, expertly dodging every hook she cast. Once, when she was gushing about a friend's romantic proposal, I just yawned and said, "Sounds expensive. For that much money, I'd rather just get a new graphics card." She didn't say anything then. She just looked down and poked at the rice in her bowl. The rest of that dinner was eaten in complete silence. The real blow came at a party with friends. A big group of us were out at a local brewery, and the vibe was great. One of my buddies, a few beers in, slung his arm around his girlfriend and called out, "Hey, so when are you two making it official? We're getting impatient to buy you a wedding gift." The table erupted in cheerful laughter as all eyes turned to me and Chloe. Chloe blushed, looking down shyly, but a small smile played on her lips. She peeked up at me, her eyes full of hopeful anticipation, shining with the desire for one specific answer. Everyone was waiting. I smirked, took a swig of my beer, and said, "What's the rush? I haven't saved up enough for a ring yet." I paused, my eyes sweeping over Chloe's instantly frozen expression, and added slowly, "Besides, our Chloe here still has to help her bestie Caleb get his life sorted out. Can't let me get in the way of that, right?" The words hung in the air, and the lively atmosphere at the table instantly solidified. Everyone's smiles froze on their faces. Their eyes darted nervously between me and Chloe. Caleb wasn't there, but suddenly it felt like he was sitting right between us. The only sound was the background chatter of the brewery. The friend who'd started it all looked like he wanted to dive headfirst into his plate of nachos. The blood drained from Chloe's face, leaving it a sickly white. She snapped her head up to look at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, shock, and a deep, cutting pain. The light that had been sparkling in them just a moment ago shattered into a million pieces. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Her eyes just started to well up with tears. The second half of that dinner was excruciatingly awkward. Chloe kept her head down the entire time, barely touching her food, her shoulders trembling slightly. No one made any more jokes. Everyone just ate grimly, eager for the painful evening to end. Back home, the second the door closed, Chloe, who had been silent the whole ride, finally exploded. As if all her strength had been ripped away, she slumped against the door, tears streaming down her face. Her voice was broken, hysterical with despair. Is there even a future for us? You don't want to marry me at all, do you? She was sobbing, shaking from head to toe, as if trying to cry out every last drop of hurt and anxiety. I watched her break down with an unnerving, almost cold sense of calm. I waited until her sobs subsided a little before I spoke, my voice quiet, but sharp enough to pierce her where it hurt the most. You want the truth? She looked up at me, her face a mess of tears. From the moment you started ditching me again and again, for Caleb, from the moment we had the same fight a dozen times and you still refused to change, I said, each word precise and cruel. I decided I was never going to marry you. She gasped, as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Did you really think? I took a step closer, staring directly into her eyes, now gray with devastation, that I could ever trust that after we were married, you wouldn't get another one of his emergency calls in the middle of the night and just abandon me, or abandon our potential kids, to go help him? It was a brutal, devastating blow, a sledgehammer that completely obliterated every fantasy and hope she had left. Chloe's expression went blank for a second, then contorted in overwhelming pain and despair. All her strength gone, she slid down the door and collapsed onto the floor, letting out a raw, guttural sob that was more of a wail than a cry. It was more desperate and agonizing than any time before. She understood. Some cracks, once they form, can never be repaired. Some trust, once it's broken, can never be rebuilt. She cried for a long, long time, her heart breaking audibly in the small entryway. I just stood there, watching her calmly. I even handed her a box of tissues. Then, as her cries quieted to ragged breaths, I delivered the final, merciless blow. See, this is what you do. Instead of solving the problem, you just cry, and then, you do it all over again. Her crying stopped abruptly. All that was left was the sound of choked, intermittent sobs echoing in the empty space, filled with an infinite, hopeless despair. She finally truly understood. There was no future for us. There hadn't been for a long time. 5. The good guy wins, and the engagement after that night's emotional collapse. The atmosphere in our apartment dropped below freezing. Chloe became a ghost, utterly silent, as if her soul had been scooped out. She still cooked and cleaned, still complied with my demands for interest payments, but the light in her eyes was gone. She was more like an exquisite, programmable doll. She stopped probing about the future, never again mentioning anything to do with someday. The dead silence of her despair was so thick, even I started to find it suffocating. But the quiet was soon broken by her mother's phone calls. They became much more frequent, and 8 times out of 10, Chloe would hang up with red-rimmed eyes, her mood sinking even lower. I didn't have to eavesdrop to know what was being said. Her mom must have sensed something was wrong, and I was sure that helpful Caleb wouldn't miss an opportunity to score points. He was probably dropping concerned little hints to her parents, things like, Chloe seemed a little down lately, or I saw her the other day, and she just seems so unhappy it really worries me. That weekend, Chloe went to visit her parents. She came back with bags of groceries, but her face was grim. My mom sent these, she said flatly, putting the bags in the kitchen. She asked about us again. Oh, I said, not looking away from my game. She was quiet for a moment, as if gathering her courage. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, with a barely concealed plea. She said, Caleb visited them again a few days ago. He played chess with my dad, and he bought my mom one of those massage chairs. She said he just seems so stable, so reliable. A known quantity. She paused, watching for my reaction. My character on screen was in the middle of a killing spree. I replied without thinking, yeah, Caleb's a real operator. Good for him. That was clearly not the response she was hoping for. She took a deep breath, her voice growing more urgent, tinged with the panic of someone being backed into a corner. They seem to think that he's a better fit for me. They even said they want to arrange. Arrange what? A dinner. I finally paused my game and turned to look at her, a lazy smile on my face. You should go. It's a nice gesture, and your parents approve. Don't disappoint them. I even chuckled. Caleb's a great guy. You two were classmates. You're good friends. You know everything about each other. And he's so helpful. He'll definitely take good care of your parents. You guys are perfect for each other. Perfect for each other. Those 3 words plunged into her heart like a dagger. The last trace of color drained from her face. She looked at me, and the tiny, flickering ember of hope in her eyes, the hope that I would object, that I would stop this, that I would show even a sliver of jealousy, was extinguished completely. All that remained was a cold, desolate ash. She opened her mouth, as if to scream, to argue, to ask me if I even had a heart. But in the end, she said nothing. She just gave me one last, long look, an expression so complex it made me uncomfortable for a split second. Then she turned silently, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door. After that day, she never mentioned her family to me again. But I could feel the invisible pressure tightening around her. She started going home more often, and each time she returned, she was a little more withdrawn. When her phone rang, she would flinch, then take the call out on the balcony. Caleb's Instagram, meanwhile, had gone quiet. He was probably busy with his offline offensive, playing the part of the perfect, doting son-in-law-to-be. Until one night, she came back very late, the faint smell of alcohol on her breath. She didn't turn on the lights, just stood there in the darkness of the entryway, watching me. I put down my phone and looked back at her. In the shadows, her voice was as dry and rough as sandpaper. My parents. They set an engagement date. For me and Caleb. She spoke slowly, each word a monumental effort. After she said it, she just stood there, motionless, as if awaiting her final sentence. Maybe in the deepest corner of her heart, there was still a 1 in a billion chance, a desperate hope that I would explode in anger, that I would protest, that I would pull her out of this vortex she didn't want to be in. I met her despairing gaze, and with perfect clarity, even a hint of relieved finality, I offered my congratulations. Congratulations. You finally get your wish. A happy ending with your best friend. Tom seemed to stop. Then, I saw 2 silent tears trace paths down her cheeks. But she didn't make a sound, didn't break down and scream at me like before. She just slowly, so slowly, turned around, opened the door, and walked out. Her steps were unsteady, her silhouette appearing fragile and frail in the dim hallway light. The door clicked shut, severing everything outside. I knew, in that moment, that the last thread holding her together had finally snapped. The interest had been collected in full. This long, drawn-out farce was finally nearing its end. 6. The night before the wedding, the days that followed were painfully dull. Chloe became unervingly quiet. She no longer received any help requests from Caleb. Her phone was silent. She stopped making any demands of me, stopped even looking at me. It wasn't the silence of a grudge. It was the withered quiet of a dead heart. She spent most of her time at her parents' house, likely busy accepting congratulations on her engagement, while being smothered by Caleb's enthusiastic family. The few times she came back to the apartment, it was just to grab a few things. Or maybe she didn't even know why she was coming back at all. The air was thick with a silent, suffocating farewell. Tomorrow was her wedding to Caleb. That evening, she returned. No call, no text. She just appeared. She was dressed simply, almost carelessly, her face a mask of strange tranquility. But beneath the surface, a violent emotional storm was churning, the dead calm before a volcanic eruption. She was holding a grocery bag with a few beers and some takeout. Let's have dinner, she said, her voice eerily calm. One last time. I didn't say anything, just nodded. The meal was eaten in absolute silence. We sat across from each other, not speaking, just mechanically eating and occasionally clinking our beer bottles. The alcohol did nothing to ease the tension. It only intensified the heavy, oppressive sense of finality. When we finished, she cleared the table. The sound of running water came from the kitchen. I sat in the living room, sensing a desperate, do-or-die resolve in her every movement. The water stopped. She walked out, but instead of going to her room, she came and stood in front of me. She just stood there, looking down at me, the light behind her creating a hazy halo. Her expression was so complex it startled me. A mix of pain, despair, resentment, love, and a nearly insane determination. Tomorrow, she began, her voice trembling slightly, though she fought to keep it steady. After tomorrow, I'll be Mrs. Caleb Thompson. I grunted, waiting. She took a deep breath, as if it took all the strength she had to get the next words out. I know we were over a long time ago. It's my fault. I don't deserve anything from you anymore. The tears she'd been holding back finally broke free, rolling down her cheeks in large, silent drops. She didn't wipe them away. But the only person I've ever loved was you, she choked out. Just for tonight. After tonight, I will completely, totally belong to someone else. I will give myself to him, fully. She couldn't continue, just stared at me with eyes full of tears and desperation, a plea so raw it was humbling. Think of it as a farewell, or a sacrifice. Her voice was barely a whisper. Let me have you one last time, and let yourself have me one last time. Please. This wasn't about making amends or about guilt. This was a ritual sacrifice. Before she buried her love and her future for good, she wanted to offer herself up as a final tribute to the first and only person she had truly loved. She wanted to hold on to something that was purely Chloe's, not Mrs. Thompson's, even if it was just for one night. I looked at her, this woman I had once sincerely loved, and whom I had tortured in the cruelest ways possible. In this moment, stripped of all pretense, all that was left was her profound pain and her humiliating request. I felt no joy, no thrill of victory, just a complex, heavy stillness, and a flicker of something I couldn't name. Pity, perhaps. As if moved by some unseen force, I nodded. The instant I did, she threw herself at me, kissing me with a desperate, frantic passion. Her kiss was salty with the taste of tears, fierce and bruising, as if she were trying to burn herself down to ashes in my arms. That night had nothing to do with interest or revenge. It was more like a funeral and a sacrifice. It was filled with a primal, desperate passion, yet saturated with an infinite, boundless despair and grief. She was more proactive, more uninhibited than ever before, as if trying to brand her very soul onto my body. A final, physical goodbye to everything we once were. When it was over, the first light of dawn was breaking. She lay quietly beside me, not sleeping, not crying. She just stared blankly at the ceiling, as if every ounce of life had been drained from her. After a long time, she slowly sat up and began to get dressed. Her movements were slow, stiff, like a marionette. She didn't look at me. She didn't say another word. Dressed, she walked to the door and paused, her hand on the knob. Her back looked so thin, so fragile, as if she might shatter at any moment. Then, she turned the knob and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. It sounded like the final fall of a gavel. The apartment was silent, except for the lingering scent of her perfume and the ghost of last night's frenzy. A long, twisted drama, filled with hate and guilt, love and revenge, had finally, with that one soft click, come to an end. The debt was paid. We were even. 7. Post-wedding, customer service a few days later. My life settled into a new, refreshingly clean rhythm. No more worrying about being stood up. No more letting some manipulative asshole's Instagram story ruin my day. I focused on work, got a small promotion, and a raise. On weekends, I played basketball with my friends, drank beers, and gamed online. Life was full and uncomplicated. Occasionally, I'd hear bits and pieces about Chloe from mutual friends. She got married. The wedding was pretty big. Caleb's family went all out. I think she quit her job. Caleb said he makes enough for her to just stay home and relax. Man, I saw her the other day. She's lost a lot of weight. Looks like all the energy has been drained out of her. That last one came from a female friend I was still close with, her voice tinged with sympathy. I listened, feeling nothing. Relax? Knowing Caleb and his calculating family, and Chloe's passive nature, she'd be lucky if they didn't skin her alive. Staying home to relax sounded more like a gilded cage. It seemed my interest collection was over, but someone else was starting to offer post-breakup customer service. Not that I'd asked for it. One Saturday afternoon, I was lounging at home playing a game when a new WhatsApp message popped up on my screen. It was from a contact I had almost forgotten existed. Chloe. It had been a long time since her last message announcing her engagement. The new message was simple, almost jarringly abrupt. Hey, are you there? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering for a few seconds. Her first time contacting me after the wedding? Things must be going really poorly. I smirked and decided not to reply immediately. I finished my current match, then leisurely picked up my phone. Question mark. I typed back. She replied almost instantly, as if she'd been staring at her phone, waiting. Oh, it's nothing. I was just wondering that old gaming account of yours. Didn't it have a really rare skin? Caleb's. My husband's cousin really wants it, and I heard it's hard to get. I seem to remember you had a connection. Well, lame excuse. I could almost picture her, phone in hand, racking her brain to come up with such a clumsy pretext. Some cousin wants it? Please. It was obviously her, looking for any reason to re-establish contact. I smiled and typed, I do. You need me to ask my guy about it. If you could, that would be great. Sorry to bother you. She replied quickly, followed by a prayer hand emoji. No bother. Happy to help. I was the picture of magnanimity. But my buddy is traveling internationally right now, so with the time difference, it might be a bit before I hear back. Okay, thank you so much. She sent a string of grateful emojis. The conversation should have ended there, but I didn't let it. A few minutes later, I sent another message. Actually, since I have you, I have a quick question. I think my laptop has some malware, keeps getting these annoying pop-ups. I remember you did a clean install on Caleb's computer once, and we're pretty good with that stuff. Got any recommendations for a simple antivirus software? Or maybe you could take a look remotely. I had just thrown her a problem that a 5-second Google search could solve. The screen on the other end was silent for a minute or two. Then, okay, I can try. No promises I can fix it though. See? Even married, and even with the source of her guilt being the very man she was now married to, that deep-seated need to atone and compensate was still in full effect for me. The customer service had officially begun. From then on, these small favors became a semi-regular thing. Sometimes it was a tricky work email in a foreign language. I was too lazy to use a translator, so I'd screenshot it and send it to her. Can you take a look at this? What's this guy saying? It's urgent. Sometimes I'd just be in a bad mood, and I'd text her at 11 or 12 at night. You up? Feeling kind of down? Want to talk for a bit? Once a new boba tea shop opened up downstairs from my apartment. I took a picture and sent it to her. This place's mango pomelo sago looks legit. If you're ever in the area, could you grab one for me? I'll Venmo you. Every single time, she would respond. Every single time, she would do her best to help. Even if it was my late-night emotional dump, she'd stay up and chat with me, though her tone always maintained a careful, cautious distance. Even though the boba shop was nowhere near her house, she would make a special trip to buy it and bring it to my building, not even daring to come upstairs, just texting me to come down and get it. She was like a submissive customer service agent, conditioned to respond to every summons. And I, her ex-boyfriend, had become a strange, inescapable VIP client in her new married life. I could sense that she found a twisted kind of validation in being needed by me, a way to prove she still had value, and perhaps a temporary escape from the grim reality of her own marriage. Until one time, I asked her to help me organize a fairly complex industry report. I knew her administrative skills were top-notch. She worked on it late into the night. After sending it to me, she couldn't help but ask, Are you getting this for a new job? I knew her administrative skills were top-notch. She worked on it late into the night. After sending it to me, she couldn't help but ask, Are you getting this for a new job? I hadn't replied yet. The next morning, I saw a follow-up message she'd sent in the middle of the night, her tone frantic. I'm so sorry. Caleb saw our chat history on my laptop last night. He got a little angry. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just curious. I hope I didn't cause any trouble for you. I looked at the message, imagining the explosive fight they must have had. I smiled and slowly, deliberately, typed my response. It's fine. What's he got to be angry about? You were just being helpful, right? Isn't that what he always admired most about you? 8. The final provocation and the payoff, the perfect opportunity, arrived sooner than I expected. A buddy of mine was getting married and had booked a ballroom at a hotel. These events are always a chaotic mix of social circles, a prime breeding ground for awkward encounters. Sure enough, I was only a few minutes into a conversation with some acquaintances, wine glass in hand, when I saw them, the happy couple. Caleb was poured into a slightly too tight suit, his hair slicked back with gel. He was trying hard to project an air of success, but you could see the anxiety and calculation simmering just beneath the surface. Chloe was beside him in a tasteful mauve dress, her face made up, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion and emptiness in her eyes. They saw me at the same time. Caleb's expression immediately soured. He instinctively tightened his grip on Chloe's wrist, making her wince. Chloe, meanwhile, dropped her head, her face growing even paler as she tried to shrink away. I smiled and made my way over, glass in hand. Well, look who it is. Small world, I said casually, as if I'd just run into old classmates. Congratulations, you two, to a long and happy life together. I raised my glass, my eyes flicking between Caleb's ugly scowl and Chloe's terrified face. Caleb ground out 2 words through his teeth. Thanks. The atmosphere instantly dropped to absolute zero. Chloe, I turned to her, acting as if I hadn't noticed Caleb's murderous glare. My tone was familiar and friendly. Glad I ran into you. That industry report you helped me with last week. There were a few data points I wasn't sure about. Did you happen to double-check those? Chloe's head shot up. Her eyes darted frantically between me and Caleb, her lips trembling, unable to form a single word. Caleb's face went completely black. What report? He snarled, his voice a low, furious growl. When did you help him with a report? Oh, just the other day, I said, the picture of innocence, my voice tinged with gratitude. Did Chloe not mention it? It was probably just a small thing. She was probably too modest to bring it up. Seriously, though, she was a lifesaver. I would have been totally screwed without her help. My words were like a drop of water in a vat of boiling oil. It exploded. Caleb whipped his head around to glare at Chloe, his eyes so fierce he looked like he wanted to devour her. A few nearby guests had noticed the toxic vibe and were now watching with undisguised curiosity. Chloe flinched, instinctively taking half a step closer to me, as if seeking protection. Her voice was on the verge of tears. I just... Is everything okay, Caleb? I cut her off, my voice full of surprise and a touch of wounded innocence. It was just a small favor. Is that something to get angry about? I thought you were the understanding one, the one who was always so helpful. Chloe helped you out countless times back in the day, and I never said a word. I put a special emphasis on the word helpful, each syllable with a sharp slap across Caleb's face. It was a kill shot aimed straight at the heart. Caleb was shaking with rage, a vein pulsing in his forehead. He pointed a finger at me, but restrained himself from shouting in the crowded room. You son of a bitch, don't push it. I'm pushing it. I laughed, my voice low but clear enough for the eavesdroppers to hear. I'm just thanking your wife for her kindness. What? Now that she's married, she's not allowed to help an old friend. That's a little controlling, don't you think? I turned to the pale, trembling Chloe, my tone shifting to one of sympathetic understanding. Looks like your husband isn't too happy about this. You know what? Never mind. I probably shouldn't bother you for help anymore. Wouldn't want to cause any misunderstandings. With that, I sighed, shook my head with the air of a man deeply wronged, gave a small nod to the onlookers, and walked away. I left Caleb standing there, his face a mask of impotent fury, unable to explode in public. He could only glare daggers at Chloe, hissing questions at her through clenched teeth. Chloe kept her head bowed, her shoulders shaking violently as silent tears streamed down her face. Against the backdrop of a joyous celebration, she looked pathetic and utterly ridiculous. I made my way to the buffet table and picked up a slice of cake. I felt as giddy as if I'd just chugged an ice-cold soda on a scorching summer day. My buddy came over, his voice low. Dude, what the hell was that? Caleb looked like he was about to commit murder. I took a bite of the cake. The frosting was sweet, but not too rich. It was nothing, I shrugged, my voice light. Just a sudden realization that the stuff I used to think was a big deal really isn't. Yeah, if you're not going to marry her, who cares who she hangs out with? I added slowly, my eyes drifting over to the happy couple still arguing in the distance. A smirk played on my lips, but from the looks of it, she still listens to me more. This late interest payment? Totally worth it. As for how they'd tear each other apart when they got home, or where their train wreck of marriage would end up, not my fucking problem. Humming a tuneless song, I disappeared back in a crowd. The storm was over. The sun was out, and I felt damn good again. 9. The aftermath and a new beginning. The little scene at the wedding reception was like a stone tossed into a stagnant pond, and the ripples lasted far longer than I expected. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a long series of messages from Chloe. They were filled with apologies, explanations, and a desperate, near-total sense of helplessness. She said Caleb had blown up at her when they got home, throwing things, calling her horrible names, and accusing her of having an affair with me the whole time. She swore it was just a small favor, that she meant nothing by it, and begged me not to be mad at Caleb's reaction. She ended by apologizing again for causing me trouble. I glanced at the dense block of text on the screen, almost feeling the trembling of her fingers and the despair in her heart as she typed it.